So folks, what I'm going to be speaking about today is navigating your job search in the current market conditions that we're currently in, right? Obviously, the situation, not only in North America, Canada, US, but this is one of those unique situations where most of us, wherever we are in the world, are probably experiencing pretty much similar conditions in terms of the job market, right? At least. And that's what I'm going to be talking about and covering today. So I'm going to share my screen. I do have a PowerPoint I'm going to run all of you folks through. It's not a fancy presentation. I'm not very artistic or graphical myself. So, prepare to not be impressed by the actual design. But let me just run you through this. All right. So, folks, as mentioned, I'm going to be speaking about dominating your job search in a chaotic job market. So this is definitely a session I want all of you folks to be taking notes on. So be prepared to take notes. And I'm going to be running you through the fundamentals of how you can successfully conduct your job search despite the market conditions, right? So today's agenda, what I'm going to be speaking about is the 3 components of a successful job search despite the market conditions. So that's a spoiler alert right there, folks. Although I'm going to be speaking about how you can tackle the current market conditions, these things that I'm going to be speaking about today are going to help you navigate regardless of the market conditions. The difference is going to be, of course, in the approach you take, the level of action you take, and that kind of stuff, which we're going to get into in a bit more detail. But definitely want all of you folks prepared to take notes. All right. So, sorry, one second here. Yeah. So the number one things I'm going to be talking about is focusing on the fundamentals. So I'm going to be covering some key fundamentals for your job search that will remain intact despite the market conditions. So I'm going to be talking about that. The number 2 component I'm going to be speaking about is assessing the marketplace. Very, very important, especially right now. And number 3, I'm going to be talking about taking action and executing. And this is probably one of the most important steps. So in order to keep it very simple, these are the 3 core components I'm going to be covering today for all of you folks. All right. And again, make sure you're prepared to take notes. If you have any questions, I would suggest maybe take note of your questions. I believe there's a Q&A part at the end of the presentation. I want to make sure I get through this presentation. So make sure you take note of any questions. Happy to answer any questions after, I'm finished with the presentation. All right. So now the 3 components. Now, obviously, folks, there's various components to conducting a successful job search, right? And what I'm going to be talking about today, as mentioned, are those 3 components. So focusing on the fundamentals, assessing the marketplace, taking action, and then execution. And I would just wanted to stress, right, now currently in the current conditions we're in with this pandemic and higher levels of competition in terms of job seekers versus fewer opportunities out there that all of us are applying for and competing over. Despite all of that, folks, and I wanted to really drive this home, there are these are the components that will remain the same despite or whatever the market conditions are. Now, my task today, as mentioned, is I'm going to show you how these 3 areas will get you through current conditions caused by the pandemic and any kind of job market environment you're in. So let's start with number 1, right? Number 1 is focus on the fundamentals. Now, what are the fundamentals? So regardless of the market environment, every job search, as I mentioned, has a few components which form its core basis. So this should be, so all of you, as you're taking notes, you need to be taking note of these few things, because these are what are going to form the foundation of your job search. Number 1 is, I'm going to talk about each of these in more details, by the way. So don't worry, I'm going to run you through each of these in a lot more detail. But number 1 is, what does every job opportunity have in common? Like, this is one of those components that remains the same regardless of the type of job market environment we're in. Number 2 is the function of your resume. I'm going to be speaking about the function of your resume, how you need to be looking at your resume, how you need to be marketing your resume, and how you need to be structuring your resume as well. I'm going to be talking about that in more detail. And the other component is the channels of approach. I'm going to be talking about the various channels all of you folks need to be utilizing and making use of in your job search, right? Now, what does every position have in common? Now, if you folks watching can, if you want to share your ideas on this, what do all of you think that every position has in common? I want you to put in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts are on this. I'll just give it a few seconds, or if anyone wants to, I'm fine with making this interactive. If you want to unmute yourself and maybe share your thoughts on this, share a quick thought on this. What do you think? What do all of you folks think every position, every hiring position has in common? Not sure if I can see the comments actually. So maybe Navi, you might want to shout out what people are saying in the comments maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyone is?
Requirements.
I think you're on mute, Navi.
Uh, can you hear me? That's very weird.
Okay, I think there's some audio issues, so no worries, no worries. So I'll just keep pushing through, folks. So what every position has in common, right? And I know maybe some of you have shared your ideas in the comments there, but this is based on my experience working in recruitment for 8+ years, and that is, right, a problem which needs to get solved by the person hired for the position, right? This is what every single position has in common, regardless of whether we're in a recession, whether it's a prosperous economy, whether there's an abundance of opportunities out there, whatever the conditions. This is the only reason why any organization or any company wants to hire someone, right? And the reason why I want to mention this is what exactly what you need to be focusing on at your interviews, right? Is your ability to solve problems, because that's what every organization is looking for when they're looking to hire someone. They're not looking, I mean, they're definitely looking for skill set, right? And you folks are primarily developers from my understanding. So they're going to be definitely looking for development skills and maybe certain languages and projects or types of applications you work on. Definitely that's going to be looked into. But the core thing they're looking for is, hey, does this person have the skill set that can help us with X, Y, Z? That's a fundamental for every single interview all of you folks are going to be attending, right? Now, which brings me to what every recruiter, hiring manager, and interviewer is wondering at every interview. Okay, and this is an unspoken question every hiring team is thinking about when you're sitting across from them right now, virtually, of course, with this whole video interview thing going on for the most part. How will this person help solve the problem associated with this role? This is what every single hiring team, folks, is wondering. What every recruiter, what every hiring manager, what every HR person is wondering at a fundamental level, right? So whenever you're at an interview and you're uncertain about, hey, what should I talk about, or am I really selling myself effectively? Am I talking about my projects in the right way? Am I talking about my skills in the correct fashion? You need to mentally ask yourself, hey, am I answering this unspoken question that every hiring team is going to be wondering and every hiring team is going to be thinking about? That is, hey, how will this person help solve the problem associated with this role? Behind every hiring need, folks, remember, going back to point number one, behind every hiring need is a problem looking to get solved, right? Everything else is icing on the cake, right? I mean, cultural fit, definitely important. Cultural fit, personality fit, definitely important. How well you work with the team, absolutely, definitely important. How well you get along with everyone, absolutely, definitely very important, right? If you're going to be spending a whole bunch of hours every day working with people, all that stuff is very important, folks. But that being said, none of that matters if you're not communicating how you can solve that problem, which is the core reason why they're looking to hire someone. And this remains consistent and intact regardless of the market conditions. And this is really the point that I really want to drive home in regards to this. And this is, if you're taking notes, you definitely want to write this part down, right? Because it's extremely important. So whatever is going on out there in the marketplace, and I know it's tough right now, right? The higher levels of competition and all that stuff. But if you're at an interview or if you're in conversation with again, recruiters, HR people, hiring managers, decision makers, stakeholders, whoever it is regarding a position, if you're not communicating this fundamental, right, then you need to make those adjustments at your end if you're not communicating this. All right. So in order to effectively sell yourself, you need to understand the problem or the pain point first and foremost. So I'm going to give you a quick analogy here. I'm going to use my smartphone as an example, but I also wanted to stress how you present yourself at interviews is dependent on the pain points, the problem, or the project, right? Now, simple analogy, right? And I'm going to use this as a simple analogy because this is something probably all of us can relate to. We all have smartphones, right? So I got this little Apple iPhone here. Now, what are the various ways I can sell this iPhone to let's say I'm a salesperson at the Apple store. I'm looking to sell this iPhone to people. How many different ways can I sell this iPhone? And by the way, if you haven't gotten it already, so the analogy is you are this iPhone, okay? I want you to think of yourselves as this iPhone. So if I'm selling this iPhone, how many different ways can I sell this iPhone to someone, right? And feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Unfortunately, folks, I can't see the comments, so my apologies for that, but feel free to share your thoughts. But how I sell this iPhone is highly dependent on the pain points or the needs of the consumer, right? The consumer being yourself. Now, if you were to sell me an iPhone, and I'm just using myself as an example, right? First thing I'm looking for is I'm an aesthetics guy. I like phones that I like the look of it. I like the feel. I'm a touchy-feely person. I need to know that, you know, it feels good in my hand and that kind of stuff. And the second aspect I'm looking for is, because I'm a content creator, I need a good camera. I need some good space on the phone. I need a good processing capability, right? Because I'm going to be using it to create videos and stuff like that. So that's going to be what's important for me, right? Now, maybe you're someone with a different set of needs, right? Maybe you're a gamer. So what's important to you if you're a gamer? Well, you probably want like high processing capability. You probably want pretty good battery life, right? And you probably I don't know what else is required for someone who's big into gaming on these phones, but feel free to share some examples in the comments. Now, maybe you're someone who simply needs it for work stuff, right? So you just need a good phone that can handle email, you know, WhatsApp messaging, you know, it's responsive, you know, and all that, or maybe high levels of security and all that stuff. So the point here is, folks, it's one product, right? It's one product, completely different sales pitches, right? Sales pitches, right? I'm using that as an example. So it's one product, completely the same, right? But the way you sell it is dependent entirely on what the consumer's needs are. And this is the way you need to think of yourselves as a candidate when you're presenting yourself for positions and opportunities out there. If you're using the exact same pitch for every company you're meeting with, or every organization you're interviewing with, it's possible you might not be speaking to their pain points, right? Because what might capture one company's attention about yourself might be very different from what another company likes about you, depending on what those core pain points are that they're experiencing. So always remember this analogy, right? Think of yourself as the iPhone. Depending on the consumer, depending on the customer, right? And in this analogy, the customer being the hiring manager or the organization, what you decide to talk about, or what projects you want to talk about, what skills you want to talk about, what programming languages you want to talk about, which hackathons that you participated in that you want to talk about, are dependent entirely on what the hiring need is, what those pain points are, right? Because if they're looking for someone who's able to solve X, Y, Z, and you're talking about ABC, I mean, yeah, maybe ABC is definitely very you know, impressive and all that stuff, but you're not really addressing the core pain points that they're experiencing, right? So this is why I wanted to share this quick analogy with you in terms of how you're presenting yourself at your interviews. So how you present yourself, again, is dependent on the pain points and the problems and the project that the company or the organization wants you to actually work on if they were to hire you for the position, right? So that's the point I just wanted to drive home. Now, the function of your resume. Now, the next part, and this is another part that remains consistent throughout your job search, regardless of what kind of market conditions there are, right? The function of your resume. So the function of your resume is, hey, it's a marketing tool, folks, right? The purpose of your resume is think of it as a marketing tool, almost like a brochure that gets attention from recruiters, from HR people, from hiring teams, and again, from organizations. So it's a marketing tool. Now, the biggest mistake I've seen a lot of candidates make it as, you know, being a recruiter myself in the past, is thinking that if you have a good, Dean, if I got a good resume, it's amazing. It's fantastic. I invested in a professional resume writer. I'm all good, Dean. You know, that's it. But the fact is, folks, it's simply just that. It's a marketing tool. It's to get attention, right? Think about when you go to like Costco or one of those grocery stores, and you got those people handing out those samples, right, of the foods. And, you know, they hand out that sample, and then what happens, right? Next, you feel more curious and more interested in checking out the product in a bit more detail, and maybe considering purchasing the product. That's pretty much the same function that your resume plays in your job search. It's there to, you know, almost like a hook, right? To get people interested in a further conversation. It's a marketing tool. It's almost like a marketing gimmick, right? And that's the purpose of your resume. So the point here is never depend solely on your resume, folks, right? And again, like I mentioned, the whole purpose of the resume is to kind of hook people in and kind of reel them in. But the selling part, how you communicate and articulate your experience, your skills, your you know, those projects you've done and all that stuff, that still is entirely up to you, right? That part is entirely, definitely, you know, always up to you. And the point here is, look, even the most well-written resume, right? So let's say you invested in a resume writer. You're like, Dean, I invested in a resume writer. My resume is amazing. It's fantastic. You know, I'm winning a gold medal at the Olympics for my resume. All it's going to do, folks, is going to get you one thing, right? The only thing a well-written resume is going to get you one thing, and that is a phone call, right? If you're taking notes, you definitely want to write that part down. Even if I have the world's best resume in the world, it's well written. I've invested thousands of bucks on a professional resume writer. All it's going to get you is a phone call, folks. But on that phone call, the selling part, right? The ability to articulate your value, that is not something your resume can do on your behalf. That is entirely up to you, right? And this is again one of those things that remains consistent regardless of the market environment that we're in, right? So even in the current conditions that we're in, when you're in a conversation with the organization, with the recruiter or whoever it is, you have to be able to speak about your experience as it is listed on your resume. That's still going to be up to you, right? So you saying, hey, I got a great resume, it's right there, and let me know if you have any questions. Hey, that's not going to work out, folks. It's still up to you to sell people on what's on your resume. Your resume is almost there like a point of reference, right? And like I mentioned, it's there to hook people in and get their interest and kind of reel them in. But the communication part, how you communicate yourself, that's still entirely up to you, folks. Always remember that, extremely important, right? And again, this remains consistent in the current market conditions we're in. And actually, this is probably even more important now because of the higher levels of competition. Now, the thing is, and how you can separate yourself is that most people out there, and this is again, based on my experience working in recruitment, most people do not take as much effort as they can in communicating their resume, right? A lot of people, and I've mostly recruited in the tech space here in North America, and most people aren't as well versed with their resume as they think they are. So if you can simply be able to more effectively communicate, everything that's right there on your resume, if you can do that better and in a more efficient manner, you will put yourself ahead of a whole bunch of other people that are actively competing against the same positions that you are. Right? So I know it might seem like a very simple thing, but this is extremely important. It's something that a lot of people overlook when they're presenting themselves and when they're communicating with recruiters or with hiring teams as well. And actually, if I can just add to that, this is, as a recruiter, I worked on the staffing agency side of the equation. And most of the times, after my candidates that go in for interviews, we always do a debriefing with the client, right, with the hiring team. One of the most common complaints I have heard from hiring teams is, hey, this person was not able to clearly communicate what's on their resume. This person was not familiar with their resume, right? And don't think I'm only talking about people starting off their careers. I'm talking about everything from entry level all the way up to like senior level individuals. So this is something regardless of career level, folks, and it's extremely important. And again, this is a piece of feedback I've heard from so many hiring teams in terms of, hey, this person was not prepared to speak about their resume. They were not well versed on their resume. And you don't want to waste any time at your interviews, folks, trying to remember things or recall things. So make sure you're putting in that effort to be able to communicate and articulate what's on your resume. So just a few tips on using your resume at your interviews, right? Because this is important because everyone's going to be utilizing your resume at your interviews. So I already kind of mentioned this, but you need to use it to assist yourself in selling others on your value. So again, it's there to assist you with selling, right? So you can refer to your resume when you're trying to make a point or expand on something that's being inquired about or asked about at the interview. It should capture attention. So this is something I wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about because this is something I've seen lacking in a lot of resumes. And this is especially important right now, folks, again, because of the high levels of competition, right? So a lot of people, what people do on their resumes is they mention tasks, duties, and responsibilities, right? Like I did XYZ, I did this, I did that, worked on such and such programming languages, created this, wrote this code, wrote that script, stuff like that, which is great. You definitely want to keep doing that because you need to describe what you did. Now, the missing component is connecting what you did with the problem and with the end result, right? So the problem and the end result is what a lot of people's resumes are missing. And this is extremely important, especially right now, because otherwise what's happening is your resume is just a whole bunch of great keywords, right? You're only talking about what you did. But what I want all of you to do for homework is for each of those lines listed on your resume, I want to see how you can connect what you did with a problem and with some kind of an end result or outcome, right? Now, an example of this might be maybe you write coded, accounting software using Java, right? As an example, maybe this is typically what people write on their resume, right? What they did. But what you want to do is you want to connect that with some kind of a problem, if possible, and then with an outcome. So you might, instead of writing coded, accounting software in Java, you might write coded accounting software using Java in order to improve or replace manual processes for a client, resulting in a reduction of turnaround time of, I don't know, like 8 hours or something. I'm just throwing out, a random example here, folks, right? But you see what I did there, right? You're connecting what you did with an actual outcome. Do not assume, folks, by the way, it's not the interviewer's job to figure out what your impact was. Okay, I'm going to say that again. It's not the interviewer's job to figure out what your impact was. It's absolutely up to you folks to communicate that, right? So I want you communicating what you did, but also I want you communicating what the outcome of that was. So don't just on your resume, don't just list out what you did. Again, if you're only listing out what you did, hey, that's great. But you're just writing, you're probably writing things that a whole bunch of people are. How are you going to make your resume stand out? How is it going to really stand out, stick out, and kind of show that outcome and that impact that you have? So again, I want you connecting what you did with a potential problem that you were looking to solve, and then with an outcome, right? Now, a lot of you might be thinking, well, Dean, there's no, there's no real problem, that I was solving. I was just assigned to do that, and all that. Folks, if you dig deep enough, you will find that what you were tasked with doing is connected to some kind of a problem, right? Because organizations and companies don't just hire people for fun. Right, they're not just hiring people because they have extra budget laying around, and they've got nothing better else to do with all that budget laying down. Well, maybe there are companies that do that, right? But for the most part, it's because they want you to help them out with some kind of a problem. So for homework, I want each of you to go over each and every bullet point on your resume. I want you to figure out, hey, okay, this was a task that I did. What is the problem connected to this? Why was I actually doing this? Right? Why was I writing this code? Why was I creating this script? Right? So I want you to connect that to the problem, and then connect that problem with the outcome, the end result, the ROI, right? What was the outcome of you doing this? What was the impact that it had on the company, on your team, on the project? You especially want to, if at all possible, quantify those results. When I say quantify, you want to, as much as possible, mention any results that you can quantify using numbers, right? So, some examples would be, I don't know, increased revenue by, this resulted in an increase in revenue of $100,000. This resulted in a time reduction of 7 hours. What are some other examples? Increases in efficiency, right? Maybe you can put some percentages there, right? Because this again adds more weight to those claims you're making on your resume in terms of what you did. And again, the outcome and the end result. You definitely want to communicate that on your resume. All right, so that's something I want all of you to do for your homework, is go over your resume. I want you to see how you can make that connection between what you did, what the problem was, and the end result or the outcome, right? Now, you might not be able to quantify every single outcome, right? And if you can't do that, that's fine. But you still want to talk about outcome or results. And the outcome or result could be something as simple as, resulting in increased customer satisfaction or something of that sort, or, resulting in, retention of client account or something of that sort, right? So if the ideal scenario is if you can quantify it. If you can't quantify it, hey, you got to still talk about what the outcome or end result was. Right. And another tip here, and it might seem obvious, is your resume needs to be well written, organized, and checked for spelling and grammar mistakes, folks. This is something definitely very overlooked. You can't write that you're detail oriented if your resume has like grammatical and spelling errors and stuff like that. So make sure you're running your spell check. This is pretty standard, simple stuff here, but you want to make sure you're running your spell check and checking over your resume for any of those mistakes, those typical mistakes that that might kind of stick out and result in you not being considered to move along further in the process. And finally, I kind of already mentioned this, you need to be the expert on your resume. So before your interviews, and again, this is extremely important, especially right now with higher levels of competition, right? You need to be the expert on your resume. So I don't want you wasting any time at your interviews trying to remember things or recall things. You don't want to spend you don't want to waste any precious interview minutes, trying to remember things that you could have easily refreshed yourself on, right? Now, that being said, it is completely normal if you need to take a few seconds to gather your thoughts and think about how you want to respond. That's completely fine. What I'm saying here is it'll be a shame if you forget to refresh yourself on some kind of a project that would really impress that hiring team, but you did not really refresh yourself on that project, so you can't remember the details and stuff like that. So again, if you need to take a couple of seconds to gather your thoughts, completely fine. Let the interviewer know about that. But I want you to be the experts on your resume. Again, refresh yourself, review yourself, folks, on the most relevant projects that you've been working on, especially in recent years. If you're new to the industry, right, some of you might be just entering the development industry. Some of you might be making a career transition into the dev space. Hey, that's fine. Talk about your academic projects in that case, right? Or talk about maybe you're building your own portfolio. By the way, something I highly recommend is especially if you're starting out as a developer or you're making a transition into this space, you need to start developing your own portfolio, things that you can show. Now, you don't want to show a whole bunch of stuff. I would suggest focusing on one thing that you can really build out and show to demonstrate your skills and your expertise. So that if you don't have that professional work experience, you still have some ammunition to show them, hey, look, I don't have the professional experience, but this is what I'm working on right now. These are my skills, and you can actually show that and actually present that at the interview if needed, right? So again, folks, can't stress the importance of this. Be the expert on your resume. This is a mistake a lot of people make. Again, anywhere from the entry level all the way up to senior level. I've seen people make this mistake, not being experts on their resume, not refreshing themselves on their own resume. So extremely, extremely important. Make sure you are aware of that and continue to keep that in mind. Now, the channels of approach, right? Now, this is an area that is especially important, definitely right now with what's going on. How many channels are you utilizing, right? And feel free to share this in the comments. Like, what avenues, folks, are you using in your job search, right? To apply for positions, to get in touch with the right people and all that stuff. And I'm going to be sharing with you some suggested channels that all of you need to be utilizing in your job search. And a mistake that I typically see with a lot of people is they focus on their favorite channel, right? Some people, they say, oh yeah, I love Indeed, I'm going to stick to Indeed. Some people say, hey, I love LinkedIn, I get a lot of responses on there, I'm going to stick to LinkedIn, which is great. If you have a favorite channel, folks, you definitely want to keep utilizing that, maximize on that, take advantage of that. That's great. But I want you to, have multiple channels so that you're maximizing your ability to get more opportunities in front of yourself. And this is especially important right now when most people are depending purely on one or two channels. A lot of people are not utilizing the multiple channels that they have available to them for getting themselves in front of the right people for the opportunities out there. Now, a couple of examples I'm going to share. LinkedIn jobs, you definitely want to be using LinkedIn jobs. Typically many companies or most companies that are hiring are going to be using LinkedIn jobs to put their postings up. So you definitely want to use that. You want to use the typical job boards, Monster, Indeed, Dice. I believe for my friends out there in the States, Dice is a popular platform out there. And then, Indeed, Monster, those are definitely some popular job boards you need to be utilizing. By the way, before I move on to the next one, in regards to when you're applying for jobs on these job boards, folks, there's two aspects, right? There's the job posting aspect to it, right? For LinkedIn, Monster, Indeed, and Dice, where you look at job postings, you apply for those jobs. And the second part is the resume database side, right? So I don't think LinkedIn really has that, but Monster, Indeed, Dice has an option where you can actually upload your resume and then keep it on their system. So you want to make use of both of those avenues, because especially the resume database side of things, that's something recruiters utilize very extensively. It's probably more so than even the posting part of Monster, Indeed, and Dice. So you need to make sure you're uploading your most up-to-date resume onto these platforms. So don't just apply for those job postings. I want you to utilize the resume database side of things where you can actually upload your resume onto their system. That in itself is probably the more popular part of these job boards, actually, to be very frank with all of you. And when you're applying for postings, I want you to make sure that you're customizing your resume as much as possible for the posting, right? Recruiters, folks, are heavily keyword driven, right? If you're taking notes, I want you to write that down, because this is extremely important for you to understand. Recruiters are heavily keyword driven. When I say keyword driven, what I mean is they're gonna have this job description. They're gonna have a meeting with their client. They're gonna be like, okay, what are the top skills you're looking for? And that's how they're gonna be conducting their search on these platforms, on their ATS system, on LinkedIn and all these places. So you need to make sure when you're reviewing these job descriptions that your resume reflects any relevant skills that you have. Now, warning, do not misrepresent yourself on your resume. Do not mention things on your resume that you don't have experience with just so you can increase your chances of getting found because some skills were mentioned on the resume. That's not a good idea. It discredits you completely if you are If it does come to a point where the organization or the recruiter asks you about certain skill sets and you actually don't have that experience, it's just going to make you look bad, and you basically discredit your entire resume. So you don't want to do that. I don't want you folks discrediting yourselves, especially at at the pre-screen stage or at any point of the interview process, right? So my point here is you want to make sure that you read over the job description in as much detail as possible, identify those things you do have experience with, and you want to make sure all those things are highlighted and mentioned on your resume, the keywords, right? And that's how the recruiters are going to find you. That's how you're going to increase your chances of getting found. Extremely important right now, folks, again, because of the high levels of competition we're seeing right now. So you want to make sure you customize your resume as much as possible. Staffing agencies, another channel of approach. Now, look, I know everyone has a lot of frustrations with staffing agencies, but this is another avenue you want to make sure you're utilizing in your job search. Now, a note I wanted to make about staffing agencies, and this is based on my experience working in recruitment. Keep in mind that the primary function of a recruiter is not to help you find a job. Right now, some of you might be a little taken back by me saying that, but the reality is it's not a recruiter's job a recruiter's primary function is not to help you find a job. The primary function of a recruiter is to find talent for organizations. This is a very important distinction, folks, because it's going to help you set realistic expectations when you're dealing with recruiters, right? Now, why I mention this is because the degree to which a recruiter can assist you is highly dependent on what they're actively recruiting on. Right? Because the focus for the recruiter is, hey, what's my organization looking for right now? That's what I'm going to be focusing my attention on. And anyone else, anything else, maybe I might want to keep in touch with people that I'm not really looking for right now. But my primary function right now is to help find the people that my client or my organization is looking for at this time. So the ideal scenario is you want to seek out agencies that specialize in your field, right? Now, most of you tuning in today are in the development space, right? You're software developers. So you want to focus on agencies that specialize in the dev space, right? Now, for those of you who are non-dev, same thing goes for you in whatever your field or your area of expertise is. You want to be looking for recruiters that extensively recruit for your space. This is so that you're making more efficient use of your time. And chances are that the agency would, or the recruiter would be more open to definitely taking a look at your profile or your resume and seeing if they might have something for you with their clients that they're actively recruiting on. So this is where some research might have to go into place, right? Now, a quick way for you to figure out whether an agency or a recruiter has a high chance of helping you out is visit their LinkedIn profile, go to their post activity, and hopefully all of you know how to do that. But basically, you go to someone's profile, scroll down to their activity section, hit see all, I think see all activity, and then click on posts, and then you can see what they've posted. Now, everybody knows that recruiters are always posting positions that they're actively recruiting on, right? So you want to look for their history of what kind of positions they typically post on, right? And that's going to give you an idea of whether or not they extensively recruit for your skill set. Because if let's say I'm visiting a recruiter's page and I look at their activity, I see that they're posting mostly for business analysts or project managers, and I'm a developer. Well, it might not make sense for me to chase this person, right? Or try and follow up with this recruiter because it looks like they're mostly recruiting for BAs and PMs. But if I'm a developer, hey, I'm going to look out for recruiters that look like they're aggressively and frequently posting for software developers, right? So I'm going to be looking at the activity. I'm going to be like, hey, look, this individual looks like they post all the time about dev roles. I'm probably going to want to build a relationship with this particular recruiter for sure, right? Because I'm a developer and this person looks like they're always posting about dev roles. So I definitely want to get in touch with them. I definitely want to build that relationship with them. So use your time smart, folks. Don't chase after every recruiter out there. And just because someone's an IT recruiter does not mean that they can help you themselves, right? Example of this is myself. So in IT, I mostly recruited on dev roles or BA roles or PM roles in the past. And I used to always get, SAP consultants reaching out to me and asking me, hey, Dean, you have anything for me or any opportunities in the SAP space? And the fact is I rarely, maybe once in a blue moon, probably recruited on SAP roles. So I would not be the right person for SAP consultants to be chasing down and following up with. Right. So you got to maximize the use of your time, folks. Right. Like we all have like eight, whatever amount of time you want to spend in your job search every day. You want to make sure you're using your time effectively and efficiently. So take a few seconds and do that quick research, right? If you're researching recruiters, you definitely want to look at IT recruiters, but you want to visit their LinkedIn profiles, right? And you want to check out, hey, is this person even recruiting for dev roles? Do they have a history of recruiting for dev roles? So that'll help you kind of, use your time more smartly. Networking. You got to make use of networking, folks. So, especially on LinkedIn, right? Because LinkedIn is the most popular platform right now. You got to be making use of networking. Now, a lot of people struggle with networking. Now, if your networking approach is reaching out to people and saying, hey, I'm a software developer, I'm looking for new opportunities, or wondering if you can help me out or refer me for opportunities, that's not networking, folks, right? That's not networking. That's almost like, those Bitcoin people, right? we all get those messages. So you got to make sure you're actually reaching out to build a relationship. So if you're reaching out to a fellow developer, a great point of intersection would be, hey, development stuff. You both have that in common, right? And you can talk about that stuff and kind of build a relationship from there. Eventually get into a Zoom call or a phone call or something of that sort. And that's when you can transition into, hey, by the way, I'm on the market, just wondering if you might have any opportunities, at your company or your organization, or hey, I want to learn more about your organization. Because if you want people to refer you, folks, remember, people refer people that they trust, that they find are credible. If you're just messaging people and saying, hey, can you refer me for such and such position? What reason do they have to trust you, right? I mean, think about yourself. Would you refer someone to someone else without really knowing that person? Probably not, right? Because you're putting your own integrity, you're putting your own reputation on the line as well. So always see how you can build that trust, and it's a two-way street. It's not just about what you want. And I know it's kind of difficult to kind of think like that when you're unemployed and you got bills to pay, you got mortgage to pay and stuff like that. But resist the temptation to go right into your pitch. You want to build that relationship. You want to connect on something that you both have in common and build it out from there, right? So that they're in a position where they can trust you. They feel like you're a credible person. They feel like, yeah, you seem like a solid person, and they're completely fine, and they feel more comfortable referring you if they have to for opportunities out there, right? Now, another example, another channel approach right here on Mintbean, right? I mean, you guys are part of a great group here. It's a great networking opportunity the way I see it, right? So all of you need to be connecting with each other. You need to be exchanging information, getting involved with the events going on in Mintbean, because again, this is a great way for you to connect with each other. And some of you might be able to help each other out, right? Like in terms of introducing, yourself to someone that someone else knows and stuff like that. So make use of these kind of events where you can actually meet new people, connect with new people, and guess what? You're connecting over something in common, right? For the most part, most of you tuning in are developers. So, you can talk about dev stuff. Great way to connect with other people without putting pressure on them to refer you and stuff like that, right? So use that as a way for you to build relationships with each other. Now, this is the one that's very much underutilized. And this is something I can definitely speak on because I've utilized this, and it's brought me a lot of great opportunities myself, not just in my business, but I mean even as a job seeker in the past. And that is building your professional brand on LinkedIn and also other social media as well. LinkedIn right now, folks, is probably the best and probably my favorite platform for building your professional brand. So LinkedIn is not just about you going on and talking about how you need a job and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, you can definitely do that. You see those posts out there that go viral with people, getting 10,000 likes and stuff like that. And it's very tempting to put up those kind of posts. But it's a great platform that's highly underutilized for you to demonstrate your own knowledge, right? What are some challenges you experience as a developer? Hey, chances are there's other devs out there that experience the same challenges. And that's a great way to connect and meet new people, right? What are some challenges you've overcome? What are some best practices that you follow? Right? Why not talk about that stuff? Why not post that stuff? Is that not a better way for you to demonstrate your knowledge and your expertise and the kind of problems that you can solve? Right? And it's a great way to get the attention of, again, other people in your space, connecting with other devs. Hey, you might capture the attention of hiring teams, right? Because at least now you're not just talking about your need for a job. You're talking about your ability to solve problems. And remember what I said previously, right? What does every position have in common? Every position, the sole purpose that any company wants to hire someone is because they have a problem that they need to get solved. So you folks, for homework, I want you thinking about how you can start posting stuff on LinkedIn, right? Now, you don't have to do video. When I first started posting on LinkedIn, I didn't do video. I just did very, very simple, basic, posts, right? I just wrote stuff about job search tips and advice for job seekers and stuff like that. And that's how you kind of build up. So you got to talk about things that other people would find useful and helpful. And that's how you show your value. And guess what? That's when people are going to feel more confident referring you for opportunities out there. Right. And I've been posting on LinkedIn for the past, since 2016. And I'm at a point now where a lot of people in the recruitment industry, at least here in Toronto, they know about me, and I can pretty much reach out to anyone and say, hey, I'm looking for a job in recruitment. Can you refer me? And most people that know me here, I mean, they wouldn't hesitate to refer me, right? So there's no reason why each and every one of you should not be in that same position, right? And I'm not I don't have any fancy video editing technology, or I'm not the most versatile with the words and stuff like that on my posts. You don't have to be. And you know what? A lot of you tuning in are probably more creative than I am, right? So use that to your advantage. You don't have to do video. If you don't want to do the videos yet, you don't have to do videos. Start off with writing stuff, right? Writing about things that you can do, you've done, that you've accomplished, you've achieved, problems that you can solve, things like that. And get engagement from people in your network. That's how you build out those conversations and build your network and build those relationships. So make use of LinkedIn, folks. Very effective, highly, very powerful platform. Now, number 2 is assessing the marketplace, and hopefully we're okay on time. Yeah, it looks like we're okay. So the number two component that's very important, folks, is assessing the marketplace. Now, this is extremely important, especially right now. And hopefully I'm not overloading you folks with information, but I hope you're taking notes, all right? But I wanted you to leave with practical things that you can utilize right away in your job search. So number 2 is assessing the marketplace. Now, this is something a lot of people don't do. A lot of job seekers don't do that. That's extremely important, especially right now. Hey, pandemic or not, folks, there are always parts of the market, right, that are doing well, right? Think about when this whole COVID-19 thing hit us, right? Obviously, there was so many industries that were negatively affected, unfortunately, right? And not to mention so many people affected by the actual virus itself. And there's always going to be parts of the market that are affected by what's going on, and those that are actually benefiting from it or thriving and doing well because of it. Not in a insensitive way. I'm not talking about that, but what I'm talking about is that there are certain industries that have to step up to the plate and kind of provide solutions to address changing conditions in the marketplace, right? That's the point I'm trying to make here. So again, pandemic or not, there's going to be industries that are going to be doing well, and there's going to be industries that are not doing so well. So your job, and this is again one of those very important components, you need to, folks, assess the marketplace. Right? Where's the money going? Where are all the investments going? Where's all the attention? Where's all the interest? Where's all the demand? Which industries are hot? What type of projects are high in demand right now? What type of projects are trending right now? Right? I like to use the analogy of, if you're fishing, you're fishing and there's a good amount of fish where you're fishing at, and then suddenly the fish move to another part of the lake. It will make no sense for you to be standing in the same spot, folks, right? You got to move you got to go where the fish are. So I want you to look at your job search in the same way, right? So definitely, things are not exactly rosy right now, but there are opportunities out there. Your task, and again, this is something I want all of you folks to do for homework, is, whatever avenue you want to use. If you watch the news, feel free to watch the news and do this. Do your research on Google or on the internet. Find out what industries are really hot right now. What industries are doing well right now. That's where the demand is, folks. Right, that's where all the action is. Where are all the investments going? Where are all the VCs? Where are they pouring their money into right now? What is hot right now? That's where you need to be looking for where the opportunities are, because an increase in demand equals what? Problems, right? Industries that are doing bad, obviously they have a different set of problems. Like, okay, how do we how do we stay in business? Can we operate? Can we stay afloat until this whole thing passes through and stuff like that? That's their problem. What's the problem experienced by industries doing well, right? High demand for their products, their solutions, and their services. High demand for their product solutions and services results in need for more people to keep up with those demands, right? Need for more people with certain skill sets so that they can actually deliver on what this new spike in customers are looking for. By the way, I'm sure all of you have seen that graph, I think, about Zoom, right? Like when this pandemic hit, I'm sure you folks have seen it, right? How it just shot up, like the amount of demand that Zoom had at the onset of this pandemic. Now, what does that kind of demand do to a company, right? Increased demand from customers. Well, that's probably a requirement for, they're probably going to need more people to keep up with the demand, right? So that means there's going to be an increase in hiring needs. They got to keep up with the demand. They got to sustain that and deliver good quality services and solutions. And they got to do that consistently, right? So again, you folks need to look at, hey, where's all that action right now in the marketplace? So identify those industries experiencing that increase in demand, right, for their products, services, solutions, and look for the opportunities there. So just some examples, definitely the tech space, very much, especially when the pandemic first hit, what happened? What was the big problem, folks, that happened when this pandemic first hit? A lot of companies were not prepared for the whole 100% remote work thing, right? Let me know in the comments if you saw that when this first happened, right? A lot of organizations were not prepared for their employees to be working 100% remote. So what happened? Suddenly there's an increase in digital digital transformation projects, or projects whereby they need that technical infrastructure in place so their employees can actually work from home and they can keep running their business, right? Now that in itself created another problem. Anyone want to take a guess at that, what that problem was? Feel free to put it in the comments, right? What was the problem that this created then, right? That people were suddenly working 100% from home. Oh yeah, cybersecurity problems, right? Because now they're working off their home internet. It's not really as secure and sophisticated as it is in the workplace, at their workplace, because at the workplace, they have an entire IT department dedicated to securing and making sure everything's handy dandy and all that stuff. But not at home, right? Rogers is not providing, any sophisticated, cybersecurity stuff for us, right? By the way, for my friends in the US, Rogers is one of the telecom companies over here that provide internet. That's pretty much what I'm referring to. But the point here is that then became the next problem, right? So the first problem is how does everyone work remotely? Second problem is, hey, how do we make sure we're secure and we're not gonna be a threat to cyber criminals or hacking, hackers and all that kind of stuff. So remember, the increase in demand, the changes in demands occurring in the marketplace will create opportunities, folks. You just got to look at where those opportunities are. So when you're watching the news, don't just watch the news and start freaking out and panicking by the number of cases going up. I know it's unfortunate, it's terrible, right? But I want you thinking about, hey, take a step back and think about, hey, hold on a second. What is this result? Like, what is the effect that this has on the marketplace? What industries right now are helping out with this problem? What industries right now are helping to bring a resolution to this whole issue that we've got going on right now with this virus, right? I put in tech there, e-learning. E-learning has, I think like skyrocketed, right? Like everything's like, such a hot industry right now, e-learning. What else? E-commerce. Amazon was already popular. They were already doing well. It's probably bonkers right there right now, right? Everyone's, I know I'm ordering everything online from Amazon and stuff like that. Logistical companies, right? I have a friend working in logistics. He says like they can't even keep up with the amount of demand that there is on the whole logistical aspects of delivering stuff and all that thing, all that stuff. And then healthcare, right? That's another area that's obviously extremely hot. Not just because of the people on the front lines, helping out with the whole situation, but also the demand for other stuff, right? Personnel, data, information, securing that information and data. The opportunities are huge in that space in itself. And also the next thing I wanted to mention is, don't forget industries supporting those hot industries. Right? Now, what do I mean by that? Don't just look at those industries that are directly doing well because as a result of the current market conditions. I want you to look at the industries that support those industries, right? So as a quick example, I'll use healthcare, right? Obviously healthcare right now, a lot of demand and stuff like that. But what kind of vendors do healthcare organizations use, right? The hospitals and stuff like that. Do they use who's supporting their tech infrastructure, for example? Because guess what? If there's an increase in demand for the hospitals and for whatever industry in healthcare these institutions are, guess what? They probably have a higher demand for certain stuff that they require from their vendors, right? And then what does that mean? That means the vendors probably have a need for certain personnel and certain types of skill sets so that they can keep up and deliver to their customers. So look at those secondary industries that benefit from this as well, folks, right? Extremely important. And note that, the opposite is true as well, right? So industries that are not doing well, obviously the opposite of everything I mentioned just now is true as well. There's going to be decrease in demand, and that's going to affect those industries supporting, those organizations as well. So look, it all comes down to research, folks. You got to research. So again, this is extremely important because this applies to the current market conditions as well as any market conditions we're in. You need to, folks, always be assessing the marketplace, right? Don't let the stress get to you. Don't get panicked by whatever is going on out there. Take a logical look at, hey, what's going on out there in the marketplace? What industries are doing well right now? What industries are experiencing an increase in demand right now? What industries are actually thriving right now? What industries are supporting, providing a solution to this whole situation we've got going on? That's where you got to look for the opportunities. And when I say look, not all postings, folks, are going to be publicly posted. Not all job opportunities are going to be publicly posted. You might have to actually, when I say research, you might actually have to identify people that you can connect with on LinkedIn in these hot industries and actually introduce yourself and see if they might have any opportunities at these places, right? Because not all organizations publicly post available positions within their industries. If you have any questions about that, by the way, feel free to ask me when we get to the Q&A part, because I know that we're kind of approaching an hour, so I want to make sure I cover all the material. Number 3 is take action and execute. Extremely, extremely important, folks. Look, all this research, all this understanding doesn't mean a thing if you don't take action on it. So all those previous steps, right? The understanding of the fundamentals, those things that don't change, right? What is the purpose of the interview? It's to figure out how you can solve problems, effectively selling others on your resume, making sure your resume communicates your value. What else? Assessing the marketplace, right? Knowing all that stuff is great, but if you don't execute on it, if you don't take action on based on what you were able to research and find out, it's not going to mean anything. So the next and final most important step is taking action, right? Take action on what you were able to figure out. Take action after focusing on your fundamentals and all that. And put it into play, So yeah, I already covered this stuff. And then finally, folks, measure the feedback and make pivots. Now, this is something for those of you taking notes. I want you to write down this next part because what I want to share with you is what I call the 4 most important job search ratios that you need to be keeping track of in your job search. This is something you need to be keeping track of throughout your job search. Right, and the 4 ratios are: number 1, number of applications resulting in initial interest or pre-screens, right? So number of applications you put out, right? So let's say you put out 50 applications, you applied for jobs, and then how much interest are you getting in return for those? So of those 50 applications, how many responses did you get asking for a pre-screen? That's ratio number 1 you got to keep track of. Ratio number 2, how many of those pre-screens actually converted into first interviews? Right, extremely important for you to figure out. So basically, you got that initial pre-screen. They're like, yeah, we saw your resume. We want to speak to you and get to know you, blah blah. So you have that pre-screen. How many of those pre-screens actually converted into first interviews? That's ratio number 2 you want to keep track of. Ratio number 3 is number of those first interviews that converted into second, third, or all the way down to finals. Right, this is the 3rd set of ratios you want to keep track of. Right, so number of first interviews that converted into second, that converted into third, or all the way down to final. And then the final ratio is number of final interviews converting into offers of employment. Now, these 4 ratios are so important to keep track of, folks, because this will let you know within like 60 seconds, if you plug in these numbers, it's going to help you figure out where exactly in your job search there's some kind of an issue that you need to investigate. Right, so I'll give you a quick example. Hopefully we're okay for a few more minutes. I know I'm approaching an hour, but so I'll give you a quick example, right? Now the 4 ratios, for example, let's say for the number of, so I sent out, let's say 100 applications, which resulted in 2 pre-screens, right? Number 2. I mean, right off the bat, what does that tell me? That means something is wrong with my applications, right? Because the conversion ratio is so low. If I send out 100 applications, I'm only getting 2 phone calls. That's probably a red flag. So I know I need to investigate what's happening in the application stage. Maybe it's my resume, maybe it's the type of positions I'm applying for, whatever it is, right? Now, another example, let's say I apply for 100 applications. I get I don't know, 20 to 30 pre-screens, pretty good conversion ratio. Now of those, let's say 30 pre-screens, I maybe convert 2 in interviews. What does that tell me? That's a pretty low conversion ratio. From 30 pre-screens, only 2 got converted into interviews. What does that tell me? Well, that tells me I'm probably doing something in the pre-screen that's resulting in an extremely low conversion into first interviews. Right. So now at least you can investigate, hey, well, okay, what's happening now on all those 30 pre-screens? What am I doing? What's happening that's resulting in only 2 of those converting into first interviews? Right. And so on and so forth, folks. Right. Like, this is how you got to be keeping track of these numbers. And this is going to help you investigate, narrow down, okay, this is where the problems are occurring. And now you can at least focus on that part and figure out what's happening in that part of your process. Right. And by the way, in that second example, if I've got 100 applications and 30 of those are converting into interviews, do not touch what's happening in that application stage, folks. It means you're doing things perfectly fine. Right. Do not change what's working for you. I repeat, okay, this is very important. Do not change what is working for you. You only want to focus on those parts where there appears to be an issue. So I would only focus on that second metric because I'm getting 30 pre-screens. So I'm not gonna mess around with my resume because I know I'm doing that part fine. I'm going to focus on the pre-screen because I know that's where I'm experiencing a low conversion. So this is these 4 ratios, extremely important, folks. Make sure you take note of that, and that's going to help you identify where you need to focus on in your search, right? And just from some closing thoughts, right? So obviously the pandemic situation that we're in right now, definitely, you know, things are a lot different, folks. But there are certain components which I went through in this presentation, which I hope was helpful for all of you, that you need to focus on, that remain consistent, that remain the same, despite the market conditions. Right now, the difference is the approach and the degree of action that you need to take in order to get yourself in front of the right people, right? Because right now is not the time for you to take it easy and chill and relax. Like, you got to increase the intensity right now because it's much more competitive, right? But the components remain the same. It's just the level of intensity and how much action and how much time you're probably dedicating to your search. So you need to assess that, but for the most part, these fundamentals will remain the same throughout your job search, regardless of market conditions. So remember, strengthen your understanding of the fundamentals. Always take an honest assessment of the marketplace, right? The second part, research, folks, extremely important. Where's all the action? Where's the money going? Where are the VCs pouring their investments into? Check out that part of the marketplace. That's where the opportunities are. And finally, take action and execute on what you find. Don't just sit on that research. I want you to take action on it and put that into put all that stuff into action and carry those actions out. And that's it from me, folks. So hope the presentation was helpful. Feel free to follow me on social media. All my social media channels are on my website. That's www.dkglobaltalent.com/connect. I'm on pretty much every social media channel out there. And I'm always putting out free content for everyone in terms of helping all of you folks out in your job search. So hope this session was helpful. Hope I didn't talk too long. Hope I didn't what's the word? I can't even think of the term, but, you know, provide too much information, but hopefully the information was helpful. And I believe now is the Q&A part. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks so much, everyone.
Hey, Dean, that was can you hear me? Dean, can you hear me? Oh, what just happened? Dean,
Navi, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? That is weird. Can everyone else hear me? Okay, everyone else is able to hear me except for you, Dean. Okay, it might be an audio issue on your end.
Okay, yeah, now I hear you suddenly.
Okay, perfect.
Okay,
awesome.
Perfect. Yeah, sorry about that.
No worries. That was a great session. That was super insightful. There were a ton of questions. I know that we're at time, so I kind of want to just jump right in to the chat.
Sure.
There were a few questions that didn't get answered. So I'm going to go from the first question that was asked by JC. Are you allowed to mention clients you worked bought into previous companies, example, corporation, government, etc., increasing sales and revenue profits? I think you were talking about, this was when you were talking about connecting your resume to what problem and solution?
Yeah. So that's an excellent question. So great question, whoever asked that question. Absolutely, you definitely. So make sure, folks, make sure you're not violating any non-disclosure agreement and stuff like that. As long as you're not violating any non-disclosure agreement in terms of mentioning previous companies and stuff like that, because I know some companies are pretty strict about, you know, not mentioning what you did with them, or at least understand the scope of what you're allowed to talk about. But definitely you want to do that, right? Because you want to. Hey, if you can name drop, you want to name drop, folks. If you did a project at Google or Pepsi or, you know, these well-known organizations or something like that, you definitely want to mention it. Take advantage of that if you have that experience, right? So definitely feel free to mention company names and organizations that you did, these projects and all that stuff with. So definitely, absolutely do that.
Perfect. So I'm just going to get through the list of questions before we open up mics for Q&A. So just a couple more questions. Imran said that he was self-employed pre-COVID. How do I quantify that?
Okay, so Imran, it depends. So what kind of, firstly, what kind of projects did you work on, right? So I'm assuming if you were self-employed, if you're working on certain projects, whether or not you're self-employed, folks, your projects probably did have some kind of an impact, right? So maybe, Imran, you were doing freelance work, or maybe you were doing something for certain clients. Those clients, those individuals still hired you to solve some kind of a problem or to help them out with something. So folks, at your end, you need to always make sure that you're asking these questions throughout the project, like in terms of not only what you why they want to hire you in the first place, but also, hey, what was the impact of my work? What happened after I finish off with this project? Because that information is what's going to allow you to, again, talk about your impact and what you did. So Imran, my suggestion, yeah, maybe you were self-employed, maybe you were freelancing, but guess what? It still counts, folks, right? It's still important because you were still hired to solve a problem, and your involvement in this project ended up with some kind of an end result or outcome or positive outcome for the client, right? Assuming it was positive. So you definitely want to make sure you keep that in mind.
Perfect. If it helps, I think Imran said that he installed CCTV access control.
Okay, I mean, Imran, I mean, that's huge, right? So what is CCTV, right? It helps businesses secure their premises, right? And then keep themselves, at least to a certain degree, safe from what is it, like break-ins and stuff like that, right? So you might want to focus on that. So folks, don't just, again, this is, I'm not picking on you, Imran. This is like everyone makes this mistake. A lot of you folks only focus on what you did. You only focus on the what, but think about the impact, right? So Imran's like, he installed CCTV technology, these CCTV systems. And I mean, that pretty much keeps the business secure wherever he installed that, right? And maybe it's a business that has millions of dollars of inventory stored at that location. And Imran installing these CCTV, equipment is protecting that organization, right? So it's all about perspective, folks. It's not just about what you did. Always have an idea of why you're doing what you did and that impact, right? So hope that helps, Imran. But I mean, that's a great thing.
That's an excellent way of looking at it. I would also say that one of the things that it was funny, you were talking about networking, and there was a lot of buzz around that because it's like one of those things that everyone talks about, but it's very frustrating to get into networking when, especially cold outreach, when you don't know the person, you don't know where to start. And I think the way that I approach it is about storytelling. How does your story connect with the other person, right? Karen just mentioned, but like the thing with networking is that you cannot take it, like if you're trying to connect with someone, you have to look at it from the other person's point of view. Is why would that person take on your message? Like, oh, you're interested in working for my organization, or there's people that will send me a message, I really like what you guys are doing. And it's like, but I need more than that. I need more than, that you resonate with our mission or you resonate with my profile. Like, I know that I'm not as present on social media as much as other people are. And that's something that I'm currently working on. But, there's a lot of people out there that especially decision makers that are very vocal in their post. So you can start kind of like unthreading, how does that person think? Like, what is that person's, what are some of the topics that they care the most about? And then when you reach out to them, you start with that. So I think it's kind of like, how do you approach networking? Do you approach it as like, okay, I need to send out these messages and I don't really know what to say. So linking your story with their story I would say is a really good way to start. Sorry,
fantastic advice there. Fantastic advice there. Definitely agree with that.
Back to the questions. So there's a really good question about, so a lot of our community of developers are full of individuals that have transitioned from a different field, kind of like Imran, who was doing CCTV, access control, and they want to know, how do you quantify, when you are moving in from a different field that is just not related to software development, and link that story. And I think you kind of answered it, but if you don't mind expanding a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. So that's another great question, right? So obviously, folks, if you're transitioning from a totally different field, you don't have that professional experience working in another company where you can say, yeah, this is what I did and this was the impact and blah blah blah, all that stuff. So what you need to do at your end, first and foremost, you got to focus on your, you got to kind of single out your transferable skill sets, right? So whatever field you were on before, I want you to take a look at what is the intersection of that skill set and the skill set required for a developer, right? You want to highlight that intersection, right? I like to use the example of a Venn diagram. Maybe I'll draw that out later on, but you want to look for that intersection. That's the most important thing. Now, the second thing is, if you do not have that hands-on professional experience, you want to create your own experiences, folks. Right now, again, you might not be able to quantify this, but you want to show your potential, right? So again, if you don't have the experience, you need to create the experience. You can do that through building your own portfolio. Now, those of you who are devs, you have a great advantage in regards to this, right? Because development is a field where you can actually show people what you can do. You can actually build your own portfolio, your own coding. You can code your own applications and stuff like that. And you can actually show that to the organizations out there that you're interested in working for. So again, I would say focus on that transferable skill set. And number two, you want to build out your own experience, and you want to participate. And Mintbean again has so many great hackathons. I mean, that's an avenue for all of you folks can use in terms of showing things that you can do and how you can do it, and working as part of a team, right? Because most of these hackathon events, from my understanding, are team events. And again, this is how you can show what you can do, right? And now, that being said, you need to do your research on this organization you're interested in working on, right? So you can say, hey, these are my skill sets, and my understanding based on my research is you work for XYZ. Your product is for XYZ types of clients. Such and such and such, based on my research, is the typical problems you solve for these organizations. And given that, and given my skill set, these are the potential results I can help you achieve for your clients. I'm kind of, oversimplifying things here, but hopefully all of you get my point.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to ask you one last question before I open up the floor.
Sure.
Sean had an excellent question. I believe it was related to money, and how do you, I'm just gonna try to scroll up to the question. If I can find it. If your final interview does, where is it? When the recruiter asks you about money, how do you approach this discussion?
Yeah, another great, wow, you guys are asking fantastic questions. I love these questions. All right, so first and foremost, folks, you need to do your research, right? Do not ever expect anyone else to look out on your best interests on your behalf. Okay, I'll repeat that again. You need to look out for your own best interests, and you can't do that if you don't do your research. Everyone has an agenda, folks. Recruiters have agendas, HR managers have agendas, organizations have agendas, hiring managers have agendas, no matter how friendly and nice and all of that stuff and professional anyone is, right? So it only makes sense for you to have your own agenda, and you can't figure out your own agenda first and foremost if you don't know what your career goals are, if you don't know the kind of value you bring to the table, and if you haven't done your research in order to assess, okay, these are my skill sets and this is the market value for my skill set. And the research part is probably, again, one of those things that I've probably witnessed a lot of people, professionals in tech especially, don't really put too much thought into a lot of times. So make sure you're doing your research, folks, right? I know most of you are very passionate about tech. Most of you here are developers and coders. You're passionate about that stuff. Hey, I totally get that. But you need to do your due diligence, because no one else is going to do that on your behalf. And you need to be able to figure out from the organization what their problem is. And you need to get an idea of the project, what they need done, and all that stuff. Because if you don't have an idea of all that stuff, it's kind of difficult to just throw a number out there. So there's a couple of aspects there I spoke about, but what I'm trying to say is research is extremely important. Do not expect someone else to do that on your behalf. Take full responsibility for that. Everyone has an agenda. You got to have your own agenda as well. And but in order for you to figure out your own agenda and how much you want to present yourself at, you need to be well informed. You need to be educated about your skill set and the value that skill set has in the marketplace.
Awesome. I'm going to drill down on that question a little bit more.
Yeah,
How
sure.
do you, so do you propose that developers should, especially when they're starting out, should kind of have a number in mind, or is it more, should it be more flexible on the types of organizations they're applying to? Should they, so when you say research, should they be kind of adjusting that? Let's say, you know, I'm applying to Amazon and I know that Amazon pays really well. And, you know, and then I've also applied to a smaller company that's maybe just, you know, one more developer and me. So should that, like, what should that number look like?
Yeah. So again, so I guess there's two avenues you can take in regards to this, right? So number one is do your research, right? Research the marketplace, what the typical salary range or rates are for someone with your skill set at the level of career that you're at. Now, the second thing is put some, do some, invest in some, I don't know, course or program to improve your negotiation ability, right? Because if you want to be a strong negotiator, that in itself is a skill set. Now, if you want to do that, you need to be able to really ask those tough questions from the hiring team and the organization, right? Because one of the key aspects that I used to do a lot on behalf of candidates that I represent is quantifying the problem, right? So before we even get into talking about, and this happens, at the client meeting stage, right? When you're working in an agency, in terms of, hey, why do you need these individuals for this position? What is this problem costing your company? So I'm kind of talking about more advanced stuff here, but my point is, if in order for you to kind of be able to do that, you need to be able to develop that negotiating ability. But if not, you got to look at where the research is, what are the typical rates for someone at your career level, and then present yourself based on that.
Awesome. All right, guys, I'm going to open up the floor. I know that I believe Andrea had a question.
Yeah, sure.
Hi, thank you for your preparation, both of you. Thank you for everybody in creating this space. A nice presentation. I like what you just said on quantifying why you are needing this position. I've been in my current position for the past 10 years, and right. I don't know if things have changed, but my question to you is, what are solid ways I can know, especially in this remote environment, being that everything is Zoom, that this is somebody talking to me with a quantified position that they got budget for, or this is somebody wanting to have a Zoom conversation? I would assume that if it hits you, this is budgeted because you're the recruiter. Right. I wonder if there's tips and tricks that I can notice either online or just the question I can ask in the front of it where they'll know that this is the question I'm asking. Is this in government work, you call it an RFP. So it's been budgeted for. Right. That's the question, and thank you.
Okay, yeah, great question, Andrea, right? And so my suggestion for this is, and this is, by the way, folks, something very simple you can do to figure out if you're talking to someone that knows the actual scope of the project, or whether it's budgeted or quantified, as Andrea said. The decision maker, I mean, if you're speaking with a recruiter, keep in mind the recruiter is not a decision maker. They probably don't have as much of a strong understanding of the requirements for the role, the requirements for the project, or decision-making capability in regards to the project. So my suggestion, Andrea, is as much as possible, you want to make sure you're talking to the actual decision makers, preferably the hiring manager for the position, because they're going to be the ones that can actually quantify the problem. They're actually the individuals that are most motivated to actually find someone to help them out with whatever problem that they have going on. So they're going to know the actual scope of the project. They're going to know exactly what the numbers are, what it's costing their business for not having someone in the seat, and what impact it's having on their team, on their division, or on their company. Now, the second thing I wanted to mention is if your conversation is with a staffing agency, chances are it is probably usually staffing agencies do have, again, one-on-one meetings with their clients before they even start recruiting on a position. So you can assume if it's with a staffing agency, it is a well-qualified role, right? And because they've had that conversation, and again, most staffing agencies, and not to kind of throw out too much information out there, but most staffing agencies work on a contingency basis, meaning they only get paid when a successful placement is made. So an agency would only start recruiting on a role if they felt that this was an actual, real, serious hiring need. So because of that, if you're speaking with the staffing agencies, chances are this is a real opportunity. It's a real role. Now, there might be some exceptions here and there, but I'm just talking about, at a high level or in the majority of cases. And the other scenario, of course, Andrea, is as much as possible, you want to make sure you're speaking to the actual, high-level decision makers, managers, VPs, directors, C-level individuals that will have that knowledge of those numbers and actually be able to quantify why they need someone and whether or not budget has been set aside. And in fact, the ideal situation, and this might not be easy to kind of figure out right up front, but if you're able to speak to the person who actually writes the check, I mean, that's the ideal scenario, right? If you can actually find out and figure out who that person is. But I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you. And it did help to know that once it's with a company, that would mean it's budgeted for. Also, if it's on a company's website, could you assume it's budgeted for?
So that's an interesting question. So in recruitment, Andrea, and this goes for everyone out there, right? When a role is posted, that it does not necessarily mean it's like a hot opportunity or it's budgeted, because sometimes what a lot of organizations and even recruiters do is they're forecasting as well, right? So they might be looking to get in touch with candidates for a position that their forecasting will be open maybe in a couple of weeks or in a couple of months. So just because a job is posted, folks, do not assume that's a hot opportunity right off the bat. It could be that they're pipelining for something that's still not approved, that they're waiting on approval for, or that might be approved, coming across right around the corner and stuff like that. The best way, folks, is to always get in communication directly with people. Do not assume just because a job is posted that it's a hot opportunity. Again, it could be pipelining, could be that they're forecasting for a potential role that's coming around the corner. Does not mean that it's a hot opportunity, that it's budgeted and it's approved and all that stuff. So just keep this in mind, very important.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Does anybody have any more questions? I believe Sean has a question.
Yeah, sure.
I guess the question that I was driving at, so you showed us the metrics on the after the application, then you get the first interview with the
yes, that's right.
Then after that recruiter, you go to the hiring manager meeting, and then a team meeting, and then a final meeting to negotiate pricing and all that other stuff. Where I got stuck was I went to the very first meeting with the recruiter, and they were ready to hire for a position. They asked me what my salary requirements were, and that's where I totally messed up that conversation. So I was just wondering if you could kind of give me pointers on, like they say, do you start it with a question? Like, how much is your budget allowed? Or, I mean, that's the part that I'm just a little struggling with, so.
Okay, gotcha. And great question, Sean, because, I hear this from a lot of people. And by the way, just to clarify, Sean, did you disclose your salary right up front, or did you discuss the project first?
So we didn't discuss anything with project. It was, I think that's where we were supposed to get into the next round with the hiring manager. I was just at that level where they were just trying to see if I was a good fit for a mobile development position. I had some side projects. Things that I learned from what you were discussing is I should have went more on what was the problem I was solving instead of what it was that I built. Because if I could have described that problem solving aspect of it, I think I would have had more of a firm foundation.
Yeah,
But,
yeah. So great observation there, Sean. Right, and this you know, this goes not just to Sean but to everyone out there, you know, who's curious about this. So what I want you to do, Sean, is put the focus first on understanding the project or the problem before discussing your salary and rate, you know, requirements and needs, folks. Right. This goes to everyone. A lot of people, what you're doing is you're talking about your rate and your salary up front, but what you first need to do is understand what the problem is and what the project is, so you can make an you know, an educated assessment as to whether, you know, what they're looking for, whether that matches your salary needs and your requirements. Because chances are, maybe if you learn more about the project, you might be able to adjust your you know, what you want to present yourself at, right? So what you need to do is first and foremost, so let's say we're on a phone call and I asked Sean, hey, Sean, so before we get into the role, what are your salary requirements and stuff like that, right? So Sean, so what Sean could do is, Sean could say, hey, Dean, I'm happy to discuss my, you know, my salary rate and requirements and all that stuff. I would expect you to present someone within your budget. But before we get to that, I wanted to get a better understanding about what the project is, what the requirements are. And by the way, what caught your attention about my resume and my profile that prompted you to give me a call? Right? Because you want to take control over the phone call, folks, right? Do not, you know, at least at this point, you want to get more control over the phone call, right? Because at this point now the pressure's on, not the pressure, but now the onus is on me to first, you know, let Sean know what exactly this project is. And also I'm going to have to disclose to him what exactly caught my attention about his profile and his resume. Because because the reason why I gave Sean a phone call is something obviously caught my attention about his resume, right? Otherwise, I would not be giving Sean a phone call. And Sean needs to know that, so that he knows that's what he wants to focus his selling, you know, stuff on, right? So if Sean asks me that, I might be like, hey, yeah, absolutely, Sean. So this project is blah, 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 XYZ. And what I liked about your resume, Sean, I noticed you have, you know, skill set X, Y, and Z, and that really caught my attention. And then Sean could either go into talking about his salary at that point, or he could say, okay, that's great, Dean. So why is, you know, skill set X, Y, and Z? Why is that important for your client? Or why is that important for this project? And you kind of get, you know, you got to start probing, folks, so you can understand more about the project. And then that's when you got to get into salary requirements and all that stuff. Because then, you know, by this point, you already know what exactly caught my attention about your resume. You now know that this is what's most important to them. And it's possible after having that, and after I'm able to highlight the value I bring in regards to X, Y, Z, it's possible the recruiter might be completely fine with presenting you at something even higher than the budget, right? Because you have that ability to solve the problem, right? So hope that makes sense, Sean. So what I'm saying is, and again, this goes to Sean and everyone else, do not quote a salary before you get an understanding of the project and what the requirements are for the position. And secondly, you want to always, folks, you want to make this a rule. Okay, write this down, stick it on a sticky pad, put it on your fridge. You want to first and foremost find out from the recruiter what caught their attention about your resume. If you do not have that information, it's going to be like shooting bullets in the dark, right? Remember the example I gave with the phone, right? What aspect of the phone do you want to sell? Are you going to sell the camera features? Are you going to sell the the RAM, the speed, the space? You're not going to know if you don't find out, right? So you got to ask, hey, Dean, what caught your attention about my resume? You know, that prompted you to give me a call, and then, you know, take the conversation from there. Sean, I think you put your hand up.
yeah, I was wondering if you lead with that before you talk about, you know, or is that more of like right before you talk about money, you ask that question?
Yeah, I would say that's the first thing you gotta establish, Sean, right? So even if I say, hey, Sean, you know, I'm calling you because, you know, came across your resume and blah, 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 I'm recruiting for this role. What are your salary expectations? You still got to bring it back to that question, right? So Sean would have to say, yeah, hey, Dean, I appreciate your phone call. Glad you gave me a phone call in regards to this. Appreciate that. Now, Dean, before we get into that, out of curiosity, what caught your attention about my resume, and you know, what prompted you to give me a phone call? Right? You got to ask that, because then you know that information, and then you keep that, you make a mental note of that, right? And then for the remainder of the conversation, you know exactly what you need to focus your conversation on and sell them on before you start discussing what your salary requirements are. Right? All right, awesome. Awesome, great question, by the way. I love that question.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah, sure.
Sean, if I was a doctor and you came up to me and you said, I got this pain, that's good. How are you going to pay for this? as opposed to, well, tell me about your pain. Where was it? It's in your back. I don't know if I have back experience. What would sound like more I was trying to help you. I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm saying we all do that. We all want to answer the salary question. But it really goes, I find myself, it really goes down to those old things that we were taught when we were 5 years old. Seek first to understand before being understood. And then somebody wants you for that thing, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah, that's a great, it's funny and you know, Andrea, that's such a great example because I actually use that analogy myself as well. It's the doctor versus patient analogy, right? So when you go into a doctor, the doctor's not going to sit down and say, hey, you know, Dean, you know, here's the bill. You know, that's not what they're going to do. They're going to ask questions, right? They're going to say, hey, Dean, so you know, what's happening? What's happening right now? What's going on? You know, they're going to check, do some random checks, check my, you know, tonsils or check my fever, my temperature, all this stuff. The doctor is going to assess what the problem is before getting into the actual solution, as well as Andrea said, you know, the bill and all that stuff. So great example there, Andrea. I love that.
Awesome. Guys, we're at the 2:30 mark, so we're about an hour and a half, about 30 minutes over the session. I urge everyone to check out Dean on LinkedIn and connect with him directly. He's an excellent resource. I believe he does webinars. Is it daily, Dean, or I do see your live events happening like every now and then during the week?
Yeah. So every Wednesday, folks, at 11 a.m. Eastern time zone, I go live on my LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, as well as Periscope. Yes, Periscope does still exist. So I go live every Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Eastern time zone. So feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. I always go live. So, you know, any job search questions you have, I always answer any questions in the comments as well. So you're most welcome to follow me and tune in and ask me all your job search questions.
Perfect. Thanks again, Dean. This was
my pleasure. My pleasure. Hope this was helpful, everyone. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. This was a lot of fun. Take care.